Hello, welcome to today's video on what we call Amity, and this is going to help you with understanding how to approach and make notes on poetry. This could be poetry from the anthology or poetry that is what we call unseen poetry that you will need to be able to look at and work out and discuss in your literature paper 2. Okay, so first things first, Amity stands for these 5 letters. So each letter stands for a different method that you are going to use to explore your poem. So first of all, you need to read your poem through, slowly and carefully, trying to understand the meaning of the poem. In other words, what the poem is about. Okay, so your A is for about. You need to try and work out what is happening. The M in Amity stands for the mood of the poem. Now, when we mean mood, we mean does it make the reader feel happy, sad? Does it make you question? Does it feel a bit tense? Also, through the poem, as you read, does the mood develop and change? The I in Amity stands for ideas, the things that the poem make you think about and link to perhaps other bigger themes at play. For example, things like family or love or relationships or war. The next letter is the letter T, and this stands for techniques. So as you read through the poem, what stands out to you? Is it a particular single word that's effective, certain adjective or verb or noun? Is it, in fact, one of those magic 3 that we have on the screen here now, the similes, metaphors and personification? Could it also perhaps be a structural technique, something like repetition, or certain lines beginning with the same word? So as you read through the poem, you need to be able to highlight and pick out some of the most effective language or structural techniques that the poet has used. And then the Y in Amity, finally, to sum up your thoughts on your poem, is your response to the poem. Has it made you question or think about this particular theme or topic differently, or has it made you feel a certain way? And that will help you to perhaps understand the motivations of the poet as you have read the poem. So let's have a look in more detail then about how you could approach each individual letter and step. So let's start with the A for about. Questions that you might ask yourself to kind of tease out some of the meaning in the poem and what is going on are questions like, for instance, who is speaking? Is it first person, third person? Is there a specific narrator? Also, who are they speaking to? Are they talking directly to you, the reader, or perhaps are they talking to a particular other person or character? Also, where are we? Are we in a certain period of time? Are we in a certain location? When in their lives is this taking place? Does the narrator seem childlike? Are they an adult? Are they perhaps someone who's elderly reflecting on their past? Why do you think the writer has written the poem? You might not have direct initial thoughts on this, but it might all immediately, per se, become apparent about why the writer has written it, what they're trying to motivate the reader or the person they're speaking to do. Also, you begin to think about what type of kind of captured snapshot of human experience they have kind of grabbed in this poem. Are they trying to teach us perhaps a bigger message at this point? But most of what you're trying to do here is working out what the poem is discussing. Is there a story here through this poem? What is going on? And you can just make notes on those things, which will help you in your introduction to discussing the poem. When we look at mood here, which is our second step, you might need to look either at the poem as a whole and how the mood develops, or you can even revisit the structure or the stanzas, if it's in chunks, in turn. Look at them as individuals, decide perhaps the mood, whether it's positive or negative, of each of those. For example, is stanza 1 wistful and kind of carefree? And then do we move in the second stanza to a more angry mood, something that shows resentment in the narrator's voice? This would show change. So the change in the mood would then display kind of a shift in either time or in the narrator's feelings and motivations. That might then be able to tie in to the overall message of the theme of the poem. So having a look at the mood will help us to gauge how we're meant to react to the words on the page. Then you might like to look at the poem again as a whole this time and think about any ideas that are apparent. You're going to need to reread this poem really slowly, perhaps line by line, stanza by stanza, and think about it as a whole, as a picture here. Does perhaps as you read along the poem gradually open up or unfold these bigger thematic ideas to you? So for instance, if it's a poem about war, what side or aspect or bigger theme to do with war is it? Is it pro-war? Is it anti-war? Is it propagandist? That sort of thing. So it's delving in to the kind of motivations and ideas that might sit behind the poem. For techniques, you're going to aim to find 2 to 3 different techniques or single words that you can pick out as showing you meaning. Again, the writer has carefully chosen these words and techniques to craft a kind of picture, to create the mood, to create an effect on the reader. It might be that you've spotted a simile that works really particularly effectively. It might be a really carefully chosen adjective that uses emotive language. It might be that you've spotted some repetition of a single word through the poem which highlights an overall idea. You need to be able to find 2 or 3 because they will make up the bulk of your swan style paragraphs that you can do to discuss the poem in full. And then finally this last stage, and the reason it's the why at the end is because all of these other steps will help you to understand the poem better and have your own personal response to the poem. We're all individuals and we all interpret things in slightly different ways, and it might perhaps have made you think about this topic or this kind of theme in a different way. Has it motivated you as a reader to do or think or feel something different to what you did before, or perhaps emphasised a feeling that you already had? That will then help you to understand the effect on the reader and the perhaps motivations of the poet at the time of writing. So, how do we turn our use of Amity and the notes that we've made on each of the sections as we've read through the poem into a full paragraph response? This is particularly useful for the unseen poetry because this is poetry that you won't have come across previously in your study. So, what we need to do is you make the notes in your Amity sections, and then you use those notes to then layer up your 5 paragraph response. So these are our suggestions of how to do this. So in paragraph 1, you are going to include all of your thoughts that you've gathered from your about, mood and ideas section. This is going to form your introduction to the poem to make sure that you're demonstrating your understanding of meaning, themes, feelings that you've interpreted, and giving an overview that shows how clearly you have understood what is going on. Then you will see, if you look at the diagram on the right, that's the student response across there, a model response. Paragraphs 2, 3 and 4 are going to be those selected techniques or single words, or perhaps even a paragraph about the mood with evidence selected. That means quotations taken from the text. Ideally, it will be a swan style paragraph on each of those 3 selected quotations. So it could be 3 techniques, it could be 3 single words, it could be 1 on structure, 1 on use of punctuation, 1 on mood. But they will make up the bulk of your analysis, where you have used evidence and talked about how that impacts you as a reader and what the writer might have intended. And then finally, probably the shortest of all of your paragraphs will be paragraph 5, and that's like a conclusion to sum up everything that you have discovered and reflect with your response. So that's the why from the Amity. It's going to allow you to show that you have now a deeper meaning of this particular theme or topic as a result of your study of it as you've worked through. Hopefully this video has helped you to feel a bit more confident about how you can use Amity to prepare. You can use this to prepare your anthology poems, and you can use it to prepare with an unseen poem. So you could go online, find a poem and use Amity to kind of tease out meaning and have a go. Thank you for listening.